I used to like winter. That's the part that keeps catching on me when I try to tell this. I like the quiet of it, the way snow swallowed sound, the way streetlights turned flakes into slow-falling sparks. I like the excuse to stay inside and not feel bad about it. All of that feels wrong in my mouth now, like I'm borrowing someone else's memories. You asked what happened up there. I'll tell you everything I remember. What I don't remember exactly, I'll still tell you. And you can decide if that makes it more or less believable. It started because of money, like most bad decisions in my life. Rent had gone up. My hours at the store were cut right before Christmas. I was living on instant noodles and black coffee, telling myself things would get better in spring, like the weather, and my life were on the same schedule. Then Lucas called. We hadn't talked much since university. Occasional likes on each other's photos, the kind of lazy contact that's supposed to mean we're still friends, but really means, I remember your name. He messaged first, asking if my number was still the same. When I said yes, he called right away. His voice sounded older, tired. Hey man, he said, got a weird question for you. Turned out his grandparents' old house up in the mountains had finally been cleared of some inheritance mess. His family was going to sell it in spring. In the meantime, it needed someone to stay there for a while, check the pipes, keep an eye on things, make sure it didn't get broken into by bored kids or hunters with more beer than sense. Just a few weeks, he said. Maybe a month. My parents can't. They're in Spain. I'd go, but the hospital won't give me that time off. I thought of you because you're, between things. Between things. That was one gentle way to put it. What's the catch? I asked. There was a pause, long enough to make me think the line had dropped. It's remote, he said at last. Like, really remote. No neighbors right next door. The nearest town is a bus ride away. But buses don't always run when the snow's bad. Power's fine. Water's fine. There's a fireplace, lots of wood. But it's quiet. Old. My grandparents were strange about it. Like it was their church or something. How much? I asked. He named a number that made my chest loosen a little. It was enough to cover 2 months' rent and clear my overdraft if I lived cheap a while longer. What do I have to do? Just stay there. Check the basement once a week to make sure it's not flooding. Keep the heaters running so the pipes don't freeze. If anything breaks, call my dad. That's it. We'll stock the place with food before you go up. That's it? I asked. No secret cult meetings? No haunted doll in the attic? He laughed in a short burst. No dolls, he said. Although, the village has this stupid legend. My grandmother loved to tell it when I was a kid. But it's just a story. You'll probably hear about it in town anyway. What kind of legend? Some ghost. The Winter Woman. It's one of those boring local things to scare kids into coming home before dark. I'll tell you later. Don't want to spook you before you even say yes. I'm not that easy to spook. Yeah, I remember. He meant the Halloween parties, the horror marathons, the way I always volunteered to go into the fake haunted houses first. That felt like another life. Fine, I said. I'll do it. The bus ride up took most of a day. City snow and mountain snow are different things. In the city it's slush and black ice. and headlights smeared across wet streets. On the way up, once we passed the last real town, it got cleaner, thicker. It piled up in the forest like someone had poured flour over everything. There were only 3 of us on the bus by the time we reached the village. Me, an old woman with a scarf tied under her chin, and a guy in a worn blue jacket who smelled like cigarettes and cold air. The driver didn't say much. He just kept the radio low, murmuring news mixed with static. When we pulled into the village square, I almost missed it. There wasn't much to it. A few low houses with steep roofs, a church with a cross that leaned a little to one side, a shop that had the look of a place where you could buy both bread and nails. The bus stop was just a metal sign half buried in snow. "This is you," the driver said, glancing at me in the mirror. "Right. Yeah. Thanks." I hauled my backpack down from the overhead rack and stepped off into the sharp air. It felt like knives in my lungs. Lucas had said his cousin would meet me. I looked around for anyone who looked like they were expecting someone. The old woman from the bus had already vanished into one of the side streets. The man in the blue jacket lit a cigarette and watched me the way people watch stray dogs. Curious, wary, not ready to approach. A small 4-wheel drive pulled up, tires crunching on packed snow. A woman in her 30s climbed out, pulling a wool cap down over her ears. She had Lucas's eyes, that same washed-out green. "You must be Daniel," she said. "I'm Eva. Get in, you'll freeze out here." Inside the car was only slightly warmer. She had the heater blasting, but the cold seemed to seep in anyway. "Long trip?" she asked, steering us out of the square and onto a narrow road that started climbing almost right away. "Yeah, feels longer when you're staring at snow the whole time." She smiled faintly. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't. And you'll be happy to leave." Comforting. "It's beautiful here in summer," she said. "I promise. Lakes, hikes, tourists everywhere. Winter is different." We drove in silence for a while. The road wound through a forest of dark trees, their branches heavy with snow. Every now and then we passed a lone house, set back from the road, smoke coming from the chimney. "You said on the phone that you'd tell me the legend thing," I said, mostly to break the quiet. "Lucas warned you about my grandmother, huh?" Eva said. "She loved that story, loved scaring us with it." She thought for a second. "How much do you want to know?" "I'm going to be alone in your dead grandparents' house in the middle of nowhere. If you don't tell me, my brain will probably make up something worse." She gave a small laugh at that. "Fair enough," she said. "Okay. So, the short version is, there was a woman here a long time ago. People blamed her for bad winters, sick cows, all that. One year was especially harsh. Crops failed. Children got sick. Men got stuck in the forest and didn't come back." She shrugged one shoulder. "You know how people are. They needed someone to blame." "So they blamed her," I said. "She was different," Eva said carefully. "Didn't go to church much, lived alone, knew about herbs and things. That was enough. Anyway, some bad things happened all in a row. A baby died. A man froze to death out near the pass. The hunters said they saw her wandering in the snow at night, wearing only a thin dress, talking to the wind. You can see where this is going. Witch hunt. Something like that. They say the men of the village dragged her out in a storm and tied her to a post outside the old sawmill. left her there. Said if God wanted to save her, he could. By morning she was dead. Frozen, they said. Or maybe she broke her neck trying to get free. Depends who you ask. Nice people. It was a long time ago, Eva said, but there wasn't much conviction in it. After that, every winter someone claimed to see her. A woman in white on the road. A face at the window during a storm. Footprints in the snow that didn't match any shoes. You know how stories grow. My grandmother swore she saw her once when she was a girl. I watched the trees sliding past. The sky was a flat gray lid. So if I see a woman wandering around in a snowstorm, I should... What? Offer her a blanket? I said. Stay inside, Eva said, almost too quickly. Lock the doors. Don't talk to her. Don't open the window. Don't follow her if she calls you. That's the rule. That's a detailed rule for a thing that's not real, I said, half joking. She kept her eyes on the road. Stories serve a purpose, she said. Even if there are no ghosts. It keeps kids from getting lost in the snow. Keeps drunk men from trying to walk home in a blizzard. There have been enough real deaths up here. We don't need any help from the dead. Something in the way she said that made the back of my neck prickle. Anyway, she said, as if shaking it off, my grandparents' house is old. It makes noise. Don't let it scare you. The upper floor is drafty, so keep the doors closed to save heat. The basement stairs are steep, so be careful. And if something seems wrong with the boiler, call my father, not me. I'll just panic and make it worse. You're not staying nearby? I asked. She shook her head. I live 2 valleys over, she said. I rarely come up here in winter unless I have to. I'll leave you the number for my uncle, though. He's in the village, has a snowmobile. If something really bad happens, call him. Signal can be weak, so you might need to stand by a window or go outside if it's not too bad. If something really bad happens, I repeated. That's encouraging. You wanted the truth, she said. The truth is this place is safe most of the time, and unforgiving when it's not. Like the sea. Respect it, and you'll be fine. We didn't say much else. The house was bigger than I expected. Old mountain style, 2 stories, steep roof with heavy tiles, dark wood siding, small windows recessed into thick walls. Smoke curled from the chimney, and for a moment it looked almost cozy. Eva parked in a cleared spot near the front steps. I came up earlier and turned on the heat, she said. It's still warming up. I brought some groceries too. Inside, the place smelled like dust, wood, and something else I couldn't place at first. Then I realized it smelled like old lives. Faded perfume, furniture polish, years of cooking and cleaning and breathing. The hallway was narrow but long. Hooks for coats, a bench for boots, a framed photograph of a couple standing in front of the same house, younger, surrounded by snow. Lucas's grandparents, I guessed. Eva gave me the tour. Living room with heavy furniture and a big stone fireplace. Kitchen with a table and mismatched chairs. An ancient-looking stove beside a newer one. A narrow staircase up to the bedrooms. 2 small ones and 1 larger, all with beds made, blankets folded sharp and neat. The bathroom was cramped but modern enough. The basement door stuck a little when she tried it, then opened with a reluctant groan. I followed her down the steep wooden steps into the cold, concrete-smelling dimness. The boiler sat against one wall, humming. Pipes ran along the ceiling. There were shelves with jars and boxes, an old workbench with tools hanging silently above it. "Check down here once a week, like Lucas said," Eva reminded me. "Make sure there's no water on the floor and that the boiler isn't making sounds like it wants to explode." "What do exploding boiler sounds sound like?" I asked. "You'll know," she said. On the way back up, I saw another door in the basement wall, half hidden behind some firewood. "What's that?" I asked. "Storage," she said. "Old stuff. My grandfather kept everything. There's a latch on the outside so the door doesn't swing open by itself. No need to go in there." "Is that where you keep the cursed artifacts?" She smiled thinly. "Just broken chairs and rusted tools," she said. "But wear thick socks downstairs. The floor's always cold, even when the boiler's going full blast." After we finished, she handed me a set of keys on a ring. "Front door, back door, shed, and the basement," she said. "We'll come pick you up in a few weeks. Or you can take the bus back down if you hate it and can't stand to stay." "And the ghost?" I asked, half joking, half not. She hesitated. "If you hear someone calling your name out in a storm," she said slowly, "promise me you won't answer." I was going to make another joke. Something about girls being rare enough in my life that I'd probably sprint outside. But something in her face stopped me. She looked genuinely uneasy, like mentioning it out loud summoned it somehow. "I won't," I said. She seemed to relax a bit. "Good," she said. "There's stew in the fridge, bread on the counter. Eat something warm. Don't stay up too late your first night. Old houses sound worse when you're tired." She left in a rush of cold air and exhaust fumes. I stood in the hall with the keys in my hand, listening to the house settle around me. It creaked like someone shifting their weight on an old bed. The pipes knocked. Somewhere upstairs, something small fell over with a soft clunk, then was still. "Just me now," I said to no one, and my voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. The first few days were almost boring. That's always the part people don't believe, like a horror story should start with blood on the walls and whispers under the bed. But it didn't. It started with long stretches of nothing much. I fell into a slow rhythm. Wake up late because there was no alarm and nowhere to be. Make coffee. Stand by the window watching the snow. Eat toast or whatever was easy. Check the pipes. Chop wood in the shed until my hands hurt. Read old paperbacks I found in a box in the upstairs closet. The silence was heavier than city silence. No sirens, no cars, no neighbors arguing. Just wind sometimes, scratching at the windows, and the steady ticking of the old clock in the living room. The first night, I slept badly. Not because of ghosts. Because the bed was strange. The house kept making noises I couldn't identify. And every time I closed my eyes, I expected some creak or thump to mean something. A few times I woke up sweating, sure that someone had said my name. But it was just the tail end of dreaming, my own mind throwing my voice back at me. On the third day, I walked down to the village. The road was mostly cleared, with packed snow in the middle and softer stuff piled to the sides. The cold burned inside my nose. My breath made sharp white clouds. It took maybe 40 minutes to reach the square. The shop was open. Inside it smelled of coffee, cheese, and cigarettes. A bell tinkled when I entered, the sound oddly bright. The man behind the counter was in his 50s, gray hair, thick sweater. He looked me over in that way small-town people have, like he was taking inventory of everything from my boots to my haircut. "You're Lucas's friend," he said, like it wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said. "Daniel. I'm Milan." He nodded. "Eva called. Said you might need things. We don't have much in winter, but enough." I bought some extra pasta, coffee, candles, and batteries, more because it felt like the thing to do than because I really needed them yet. He put everything in a paper bag. "You're staying in the Kolar house," he said, still watching me. "Yeah. That house doesn't like to be empty." He said it flatly, but there was something behind the words. "Good thing I'm there then," I said. "House sitter, pipe watcher, ghost bait." The corner of his mouth twitched. "You heard the stories already," he said. "Eva gave me the short version," I said. "Witch, villagers, snow, death, haunting. I grew up on urban legends. We had our own. Big city ghosts, stairwell creeps." "This one isn't big city," Milan said. "Winter is different up here. People get strange when the snow stays too long." I hesitated. "Did you ever see her?" I asked. "The winter woman?" He looked past me, out the window, where the gray sky sat heavily above the square. "I saw a woman on the road once," he said slowly. "Long time ago. I was young and stupid and had drunk more than I should. It was late, snowing. She was in the ditch trying to climb out. Hand to God, she was barefoot." He rubbed his jaw. "I stopped because I'm not a monster. I called to her. She looked up at me and smiled." He paused. "There was blood in her hair. Or maybe it was just shadows. I don't know. I blinked. She was gone. Like she vanished?" He shrugged. "Maybe I was drunk," he said. "Maybe I fell asleep on my feet and dreamed it. Either way, I walk home earlier in winter now. That's the purpose of such stories. Scare people into doing the sensible thing," I said. "Exactly." He slid the bag across the counter. "Don't go wandering at night. Keep the fire fed. And if someone calls for you from outside, pretend you can't hear them." Eva had said almost the same thing. It bothered me more the second time. "Right," I said. "Thanks." On the way back, the wind picked up. Snow blew across the road in quick white ghosts. Twice I thought I saw a figure standing between the trees. But when I looked straight at it, it was just branches tipped with snow. By the time I reached the house, my cheeks were numb, and my eyelashes had tiny beads of ice clinging to them. I stamped the snow off my boots on the porch, shook the cold off my shoulders, and went inside. The house felt warm and dim. I set the paper bag on the kitchen table, hung my coat on the hook, and stood still for a second, listening. It was quiet, a heavier kind of quiet than outside, like being underwater. Then something upstairs moved. Just a small sound, a shift, a weight on a board. I told myself old houses creak. Wood expands and contracts. Heat moves. That's all. But my skin crawled anyway. The first real thing happened that night. I woke up because my room was too bright. The curtains were thin, and the moon was full, laying a pale stripe across the floor. For a second, I didn't know where I was. The walls seemed too close, the air too cold. Then I smelled old wood and realized. The digital alarm clock on the bedside table blinked its red numbers steadily. You don't need to know what they were. Time doesn't matter much in this. I lay there listening. The house seemed to be holding its breath. Something made me sit up. Not a sound. A feeling, like the way you know someone's standing behind you, even if they haven't said anything. The moonlight caught on the window. The glass was frosted around the edges, feathery patterns of ice. On the inside of the glass, towards the bottom, a circle had cleared. A patch the size of a hand, like something warm had pressed against it from outside. My throat went dry. I told myself it was nothing. Temperature differences, some quirk of how the heat rose, whatever. I got out of bed, my feet flinching as they hit the cold floor, and walked to the window. The cleared patch was still there. It was not a perfect circle. It looked smeared, like a palm pressed and dragged slightly down. I looked out. Moonlight lay on the snow in a wide sheet. The trees at the edge of the yard were a jagged black line against the gray sky. At first I saw nothing. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw the footprints. They started near the road and came straight towards the house. A single line, like someone walking heel to toe, not two tracks side by side. The prints were deep, sharp-edged, as if made recently. They stopped directly below my window. The snow beyond that point was smooth and unbroken. I stared, waiting for my brain to fill in something that made sense. A second set of prints leading away, some animal tracks overlaying them. Any sign that this was just incomplete. Nothing. The wind quietly pushed a small drift along the side of the house, whispering. I stood there for a long time, my legs starting to shake. Not from cold, but from the way fear pooled in them and made them weak. Eventually, because nothing moved, nothing changed, I made myself breathe. In, out. I told myself what Milan and Ava had said. Stories scare you into being careful. So, I was scared. I would be careful. I didn't go outside. I didn't open the window. I went back to bed and lay on my side, facing the door, the way I used to when I was a kid and thought monsters could only get you if you turned your back. I slept in short bursts, thick with strange dreams. A woman walking ahead of me on a white road, her hair hanging wet down her back. A pair of bare feet, blue-white against the snow. Someone calling my name in a voice I half recognized. By morning, the footprints were gone. Overnight snow had blurred everything into one smooth sheet. If it had been just the footprints, maybe I would have convinced myself I'd imagined it. But the mark on the glass stayed. The smear of warmth that had cleared the frost left a faint oily residue, like the ghost of a handprint. I didn't touch it. I showered too long, using more hot water than I should, just to feel anything but cold on my skin. When I went downstairs, the house felt smaller. The windows seemed like eyes half closed against a glare. I checked the basement. No leaks. Boiler okay. Then I split wood until my shoulders burned. Normal things. Tasks. Movement. The quiet I could no longer pretend was empty. Days stretched. The weather worsened. It snowed almost constantly. Not always heavy, but enough that the world outside took on that muffled, closed-in feeling, like being inside a padded box. The wind started to have a voice. Not words, just tones. High whines around the corners of the house. Lower moans down the chimney. I kept getting that sensation that someone had just been in the room before me, leaving traces I couldn't quite see. A chair pulled a little away from the table. A book I didn't remember leaving open. A faint damp patch on the hallway floor, oddly shaped, that was gone when I came back with a towel. My sleep went to pieces. I would lie awake, counting heartbeats, listening to the house shift and breathe. Sometimes I'd doze off and snap awake again with my heart hammering, sure that someone had whispered my name right in my ear. Once I woke with my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth from dryness and realized the room was cold. Not a little cooler, but actually cold. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. My breath showed in front of my face, misty and small. The door to my room was open. I remembered shutting it. I moved slowly. The way you move when you're afraid a sudden movement will make a shape in the dark. Realize you can see it. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, feet searching for slippers I didn't bother with, but finding them anyway. The floorboards were like ice even through the thin soles. I stood up. From the hallway came the softest sound, like someone dragging fingertips along wallpaper. It started near the stairs, came closer. I couldn't see anything from where I stood. The angle was wrong. All I could see was the strip of pale light on the hallway floor, coming from the window at the top of the stairs. In that light, something moved. Not a shadow. A change in the quality of the air, like heat waves above asphalt, but inverted, cold waves, distorting the moonlight. My heart hammered. "Hello?" I said, and hated how small my voice sounded. The sound stopped. Silence. Thicker than before. I don't know how long I stood there. My legs started to tingle. Pins and needles crawled up from my feet. Finally, because I couldn't stand the not knowing, I stepped into the hall. The air in the hallway was colder than inside my room. It wrapped around me like wet cloth. Goosebumps rose on my arms. There was nothing there. The window at the top of the stairs was a rectangle of pale light. The banister cast its usual shadows. The framed photo of Lucas's grandparents hung straight. And yet, on the wall, about as high as my chest, the wallpaper looked disturbed. A long, faint smudge, as if ice had been dragged along it in a slow, deliberate stroke. My hand, when I touched it, came away damp. I shut the door to my room firmly and slid the chest of drawers against it. It felt stupid, childish, but the weight of it eased something small inside me. I slept leaning against the headboard, blanket wrapped around me, freezing, listening for every sound. The next morning, there was frost on the inside of the door. From the bottom up to about halfway, delicate branching patterns reached towards the handle, as if they'd grown from someone's breath. That day, I took a long walk, just for the sake of walking away from the house. The snow was deeper. It came up past my ankles even in the cleared parts. I walked along the road, past the turnoff to the village, just to see what was beyond. There wasn't much. Trees, a frozen ditch, a wooden sign, half buried, pointing towards a trailhead that was now an indistinct white slope. The air felt thinner the farther I went, like I was moving uphill even when the road was flat. After a while, I turned back. My toes were numb. My face stung. As I approached the house again, I saw something that made me stop. Footprints. My own from earlier, leading away down the road. And beside them, a second set. Bare, narrow, toes clear in the packed snow. They started a few meters from the house, as if appearing from nowhere, then walked alongside my tracks down the road. My head buzzed. I turned, scanning the fields, the edges of the forest, the road behind me. Nothing. Just the same gray silence, the same trees, the same snow. I followed my own prints back to the house, not looking at the bare ones more than I had to, afraid that if I stared, I'd see something crouched at the edge of my vision. Once I was inside, I locked the door. Then I pushed the heavy hall chair up against it. I wasn't sure what I thought that would do against anything that could appear out of nothing, but it felt like action, and action was better than frozen panic. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? I didn't know the villagers well enough to handle their looks. If I called Lucas or Eva and told them their grandparents' house was haunted, what could they do besides worry? Leave their jobs? Drive up in a storm? Only to find nothing they could see. It was easier to tell myself stress was messing with my perception. Isolation, too. I wasn't used to this kind of quiet. My brain was filling in blanks with old stories, pulling shapes out of patterns. That was what I told myself. Over and over. That night, I dreamed in sharp, clear images. I stood in a snowstorm on a dark road. The wind tore at my clothes, but I could feel nothing. The snow made a curtain, hiding everything beyond a few meters. A woman walked towards me through the white. She wore a dress that might once have been blue. Now it was faded so pale it could have been gray, or white with shadows printed on it. Her hair was black and long, loose around her shoulders, damp with snow. Her feet were bare. Her skin was the color of milk left too long in a cold room. She stopped an arm's length away. Her eyes were dark, not black exactly, but a deep brown that reflected nothing. Her lips were cracked, pale except for the thin line of red where they'd split. She tilted her head, studying me. "You're in my house," she said. Her voice was not what I expected. It was not a wail or a whisper. It was tired, matter of fact, like someone finding a stranger in their kitchen. "I'm just taking care of it," I said, and my voice sounded thin in the snow. "I won't do anything bad." She looked up, past me, towards where I knew the house stood, although I couldn't see it through the storm. "They let me freeze," she said. "You took my bed." "I didn't," I started, but she cut me off with a small movement of her hand. "I know you," she said. "You never saw me, but you know my story. They told you over warm drinks. Their mouths moved and you nodded and you thought, how terrible. And then you slept well." Her words hit in that place where guilt lives, even if you don't think you have anything to feel guilty about. "I didn't do anything," I said, but it sounded weak even to me. "You didn't stop them," she said. "They're all dead," I said. "Whoever did it. They've been dead a long time." Her expression didn't change. "I'm not," she said. She raised her hand. Her palm hovered in the air between us. fingers slightly curled. It looked delicate, bones sharp under thin skin. "Give me your hand," she said. "I don't want to," I said. "That's not what I asked," she said. I held very still. The wind screamed around us, but we seemed to stand in a pocket of calm. "If you're afraid," she added, "you're not ready." She let her hand fall. "When you're ready," she said, "come outside when I call you. Don't make me come in." I tore myself out of the dream then, gasping, heart pounding so hard my chest hurt. My hands were clenched so tight my fingers ached. The room was dark. My breath puffed in front of my face. On the window, a patch of frost had melted, leaving a clear handprint. The fingers were longer than mine. After that, things changed. I stopped thinking of her as the ghost and started thinking of her as her. It made everything both worse and easier. Worse because it was harder to dismiss a person. Easier because my fear shifted from an aimless dread into something with a face. I still tried to keep my life as normal as possible. I read. I cooked. I wrote in a notebook, partly to keep my head straight, partly to prove to myself that time was passing in a linear way and not circling the drain. But every day the house felt more occupied. In the bathroom mirror sometimes I caught a second reflection over my shoulder, not clear, but enough to show dark hair, a hint of pale throat. When I turned, there was nothing there. Once in the kitchen, I walked in to find the back door standing open. Snow had blown in, making a white fan on the floor. No footprints led up to or away from the door. The lock was not broken. The key was where I left it. I shut it, wiped up the snow, and told myself I must have forgotten to close it properly. My coffee went cold faster than it should have. Things I held on to kept a chill, even near the fire. I thought about leaving. I could have walked down to the village, waited for the bus, gone back to my small apartment full of noisy neighbors and thin walls, taken a break from watching the corners of rooms. But the money mattered. And there was something else, too. A stubborn streak in me that didn't want to be chased out by something I still half believed was my own mind drawing shapes. I told myself, just a few more days, then weeks, then until the snow lightens up, until the next sunny day. The sunny day didn't come. Instead, the storm did. It began one afternoon with the sky going from flat gray to something darker. The clouds thickened. The wind picked up without warning, snapping at the bare branches, making the house shudder. Snow came sideways, driven by the wind. It hit the windows with a constant hiss. I checked my phone. No signal. I tried anyway. Eva. No connection. Milan's shop. Nothing. The power flickered, steadied, then flickered again. I went downstairs to look at the boiler. It hummed along, oblivious. The basement was colder than usual, though. My breath fogged in front of me. The storage room door, the one Eva had told me not to bother with, was ajar. I stared at it, heart jackrabbiting. I had not opened it. I would have remembered. I had barely even looked at it since that first tour. The latch hung down, swinging slightly. "Okay," I said out loud, my voice sounding small. Okay. The rational part of my brain said, draft, bad latch, the storm shaking the house, a shift in air pressure, old hinges. The rest of my brain pictured pale hands feeling along the wall in the dark, finding the latch by guesswork. I took a step towards it. Cold wrapped around my ankles, climbed my legs. It felt like wading into a river in winter. My skin prickled. My teeth ached. The open gap was pitch black. Something moved in there. Not towards me, not away. Just a slight shift, like weight adjusting on an unseen crate. I didn't go closer. Not today, I whispered, not sure who I was talking to. I grabbed the handle of the basement door behind me and pulled it closed. The wood thudded into the frame. I locked it. I had never bothered to lock it before. Back upstairs, the wind howled louder. The lights flickered again, then went out. The sudden lack of hum from the refrigerator made the silence feel deeper. Snow pressed against the windows. The world outside was a shifting white blur. I lit candles, one on the kitchen table, one on the coffee table in the living room, one in the hallway. The house looked softer in their light, less defined, the corners filled with shadow. I added wood to the fire. The flames caught slowly, then grew, licking at the logs. For a while I sat in the armchair by the fireplace with a blanket over my knees, just watching the fire. It felt almost comforting, old-fashioned, like I'd been dropped into someone else's century. The storm pounded at the walls. Somewhere in the house, something fell with a muffled thud. I tensed, then told myself it was just some old box, something shifting. Then I heard it, faint at first, so soft I thought it was just the wind changing tone. My name, not whispered, not screamed, just spoken, in that same tired, matter-of-fact voice from my dream. Daniel. I sat very still. The hairs on my arms stood up under the blanket. It came again, from outside near the back door. Daniel. I swallowed. My throat felt too tight. You're not real, I said, but it came out as a breath more than words. Tired yet? She asked. Her voice sounded closer. Tired of pretending you don't hear me? I put the blanket aside and stood up. I told myself I was going to prove there was nothing there, that the wind was playing tricks with the trees, with the chimney, with the shape of my name. But my legs moved in that stiff, slow way that comes when your body is full of bad adrenaline. In the hallway, the candle flame bent almost flat in a gust of cold air. The front door rattled in its frame. I walked towards the kitchen. The back door's small window was a glowing rectangle. Snow pressed up against it, a moving white smear. Her shadow moved across it. It was unmistakable. The outline of a head, shoulders, the hint of hair blown by the wind. She passed slowly, as if pacing back and forth. Open the door, she said. It's cold. My chest hurt. I realized I'd been holding my breath. Every story I'd ever heard, every warning, every bit of advice from Ava and Milan pressed against my skin like hands. If someone calls you, don't answer. Don't open the window. Don't follow if she asks. I reached out, my fingers brushing the doorknob. It was so cold it burned. Please, she said. The word sounded wrong in her mouth, like it was new to her. They left me outside. You're not like them, are you? My hand tightened on the knob. Go away, I forced out. You're not supposed to be here. She laughed. It was not cruel. It was worse. Soft. Amused that I still thought supposed to meant anything. This was my house before it was yours, she said. Before theirs. Before the old man hammered the first nail. I walked this hill when there were no roads. I know every stone under the snow. You're the one who isn't supposed to be here. The door shook, just once. Not like someone was banging on it. More like a shiver ran through it. I won't hurt you, she said. Not right away. There was something in the way she said that. Not a joke. Not a threat exactly. A plain statement. A mechanic scheduling a repair. You're dead, I said. So are most things, she said. The knob grew colder under my hand. I pulled it back, hissing. When I looked, the metal was rimed with frost. I'm going to the village, I said, not to her, but to the empty air, to myself. I'm leaving. Tomorrow. First light. No buses tomorrow, she said. Road's closed. Storm will block it. They'll stay home by their fires and tell each other to wait it out. They're good at waiting things out. They waited out my screams. The image came unbidden. A circle of men in heavy coats, standing just out of reach of a woman tied to a post outside the old sawmill. Their faces turned away, their shoulders hunched not from cold, but from shame they'd never name. Don't call me again, I said. It sounded pathetic, childish, like telling the tide to stop rising. Come outside, she said, ignoring that. Come see what they did. Come feel it. Her shadow moved past the window again. For a heartbeat, her face was silhouetted against the snow. Her hair blew sideways. I thought I saw her mouth stretched into something that might have been a smile, except there was no joy in it. Then she was gone. The candle in the hallway went out. Darkness rushed in, pressing against the small pool of firelight from the living room. I backed away from the kitchen door, heart punching in my chest. I wanted to push the fridge in front of it, drag the table, anything to put weight between us. But some stubborn part of me knew it wouldn't matter. I went back to the living room and sat down. The fire snapped and popped. Shadows danced on the walls. I stayed there all night, dozing in snatches, jumping awake at every sound, expecting cold fingers to close around my ankle and pull. Morning came eventually. Gray light seeped through the frosted windows. The storm had not stopped, but it had calmed, the wind less shrill. The power was still out. My phone was dead. I tried the front door. Snow pushed against it, heavy. I managed to get it open a few inches, enough to see that the world outside was now a white tunnel. The path to the road had vanished under drifts that came up almost to my waist. The sky was a dull lid just above the trees. Walking to the village in that would have been more than stupid. It would have been suicide. I shut the door. My breath smoked in front of me. The air inside was colder. The fire had burned down to embers. I added more wood with shaking hands, coaxed the flames back. The warmth barely made a dent. My plan shifted, not leaving, surviving until the storm let up. That was it. Keep the fire fed, ration food, stay awake as much as possible, stay inside. Time blurred. Without power, there was no hum, no background buzz, just the crackle of the fire, the occasional groan of the house adjusting to the cold, the distant, constant hiss of the storm. The temperature kept dropping. I put on every piece of clothing I had. 2 pairs of socks, jeans over thermal leggings, 3 layers of shirts under my sweater, my coat, hat, gloves. I still shivered. The air coming up from the basement stairwell felt colder than the rest of the house, like the door was a window to some deeper winter. Sometimes I thought I heard her down there. Not words. Humming, maybe. A melody I couldn't quite catch. Or the squeak of rope being pulled tight. On the second day without power, I found the journal. I wasn't looking for it. I was rummaging through a drawer in the living room sideboard, searching for matches, when my fingers closed around something small and hard-bound. It was leather, cracked with age, the color of dried dirt. The pages inside were yellowed, edges rough. There was no name on the first page, just a date, written in a tight, neat hand. 20 November. The year meant nothing to me at first. It took a second before I realized how long ago it was. Pre-war, pre my grandparents' birth, heavy wool skirts and horses instead of cars. The language was old-fashioned, but I could understand it. I knew as soon as I read the first lines that it was hers. Not because it said my name is. It didn't. But because the voice on the page matched the one I'd heard in the snow. Tired, precise, holding something sharp back. She wrote about the winter starting early, about the men muttering in the tavern, about children coughing at night, about going to the forest for herbs and coming back with her skirts crusted with snow. She wrote about small cruelties, neighbors who stopped meeting her eyes, women who used to ask her for help with births and pains now crossing themselves when she passed, the priest who took her father's name off the list he prayed for at Mass after he died. I know what they say, she wrote, that I walk in the snow without shoes and speak with things that don't cast shadows. The first is sometimes true. Shoes are expensive. The second is not. I speak with my own shadow. It answers more kindly than they do. Her entries became shorter as winter deepened. There were gaps, weeks with no words, then a burst of writing, cramped and hurried. They came to my door, she wrote, not with torches, with shovels and rope. They said I must come with them to pray for forgiveness. I told them I had already prayed. They did not listen. The next page was smeared, ink blurred by something wet. I can't feel my feet, one line read, alone, as if she'd had to stop and start again around it. The rest was different. The letters shaky, the sentences shorter. They have tied my hands, she wrote. The rope burns worse than the cold. They say I can be forgiven if I confess. I asked, confess what? They said, the winter, as if I could command the sky. The ink trailed off, then resumed lower down. My hair is frozen to my face. When I breathe, it hurts. The post is rough against my back. They watch me from the doorway of the sawmill. I can see their breath in the air. They look away when I look at them. cowards. The next entry was just a single line, crooked on the page. They think this is torture. My stomach twisted. I forced myself to keep reading. They do not know what it is to be alone with the sound of your own teeth, to listen to your fingers crack and know it is your own doing, because you refuse to call for mercy from men who would not give it. This is not their torture. This is mine. I choose this. The words shook on the page. It is cold, she wrote. It is so cold. The rope bites my wrists. My arms burn. My feet are... I can't feel them well enough to tell if they are still there. When I try to move them, it feels like glass shattering. I thought of her standing barefoot in the snow in my dream, of the footprints beside mine on the road. She had more to say. I can hear them talking, she wrote. They argue about whether to go home. One says, she's suffering. We should end it. Another says, that's the point. They laugh, but it sounds weak. A blot of ink, then more. I said I would never beg. I keep that promise. I scream, but I scream words that are not for them. I scream to the dark between the snowflakes, to whatever watches. If there is a God, he is not in their church. He is out here with me, shoulder to shoulder in the cold. Or he is nothing, and I am alone. Either way, I will not speak to them. The next lines were cramped, slipping down the page like she'd been writing while her head drooped. I think my toes are gone, she wrote. If they cut me down now and carried me inside, I think they would break off in the blankets. That makes me laugh. I mouth jokes they can't hear. The storm steals my breath when I try to shout. A smear of ink. Then, time is strange. I do not know if it has been hours or days. I count my heartbeats, but I keep losing track. The post is the only warm thing. My back has stuck to it in places. When the wind blows from behind, it feels like someone pressing their hand between my shoulders, pushing me forward, telling me, one more step. The rest of the page was torn. The last line cut off mid-sentence. There were no more entries. The rest of the journal was blank. I sat back, the room seeming to tilt a little. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the book. She called what they did to her not their torture, as if she'd chosen it, turned it into something she owned rather than something done to her. But the details were plain enough. The rope cutting into her arms, the cold embedding itself in her bones, the way her body betrayed her piece by piece. I imagined her fingers stiffening around the pen as she wrote those last lines. How long had she held on to consciousness, forcing herself to make marks on paper while her skin burned and then went numb? A noise pulled me out of my thoughts. A slow creak. Not from above, from below. The basement door. The handle turned by itself in a small, steady movement. The latch lifted. The door eased open a few centimeters. Cold poured up like water from a well. I stood. The journal slid from my lap, thudding on the floor. I know you read it, she said. Her voice came from the dark rectangle of the stairwell. No echo. As if the stairwell drank sound. I didn't mean to, I said, which was stupid. Of course I had meant to once I'd realized what it was. Curiosity, horror, empathy, guilt. They'd all mixed into something that pushed me to keep going. I left it for you, she said. They hid it, but they were never as good at hiding things as they thought. Not like I was. A pale shape appeared in the stairwell, not fully formed. A lighter patch of darkness, edges soft. She stepped up into the line of candlelight. She looked as she had in my dream, but sharper. The outline of her dress, the fall of her hair, the slope of her shoulders, it was all clearer. Her skin had that same milk-cold tone. Frost clung to the ends of her hair, beads of ice catching the candlelight. Her feet were bare on the wooden steps. They left no marks, but I swear I could see the boards frost over under them. "You know what they did," she said. "Good. Now you will understand." "Understand what?" I asked, my mouth dry. "What it means to be left," she said. "To have your pain measured and discussed by people with warm hands. To be their story, not your own." "I'm not them," I said. I trailed off. There was no good way to finish that sentence. Just passing through sounded pathetic. Just trying to pay rent sounded obscene. "You sleep in my bed," she said. "You warm yourself by my fire. You read my words. You think you're different because your clothes are modern and you know words like trauma and psychology. But when you hear screaming, you cover your ears the same as they did." "I haven't heard," I started. She smiled then. It was a small, thin thing. "You will," she said. She lifted her hand. "Come," she said. "It's time." "I'm not going outside," I said. "I'm not that stupid." She laughed, and there was nothing human in the sound. Not animal either. It was like ice cracking on a lake, sudden and sharp. "Oh, Daniel," she said. "You think everything happens outside?" The air around me thickened. My breath hitched. I couldn't move. It wasn't like in nightmares where you try to run and your legs turn to jelly. It was worse. My muscles locked, one by one, starting from my ankles, climbing. It felt like they were filling with freezing water that then solidified. My lungs still worked, but each breath hurt, as if I'd inhaled glass. She stepped fully into the hall. The candle flame guttered, then steadied, longer, as if stretching towards her. She reached out. Her fingers brushed my cheek. The cold was beyond anything I'd felt. Not like standing outside, not like touching snow. It was the cold from her journal, the kind that burns and then burrows, the kind that belongs more to absence than to temperature. It crawled along my jaw, across my lips, into my teeth. I tried to turn my head away. It wouldn't move. "You said you wouldn't hurt me," I managed to choke out. My lips felt thick. "I said I wouldn't hurt you right away," she reminded me. "I'm not hurting you yet. I'm just opening the door." Her hand slid down to my throat, not squeezing, just resting there, light, her thumb over my pulse. My heart hammered against her skin. Her eyes darkened. "Strong," she murmured. "For now." She stepped closer until I could see small details. The faint freckles on her nose, the tiny white scars near her hairline, the way her lips had cracked not just from cold, but from biting down hard on them. She still smelled faintly of smoke and something else. Pine pitch, old snow, the sharp tang of iron. She turned us, though I didn't feel myself move, and guided me towards the basement stairwell. Inside, the dark gaped. "No," I said, and my voice cracked. Please, I don't want. You don't have to want it, she said. That's what you never understood. Wanting has nothing to do with it. We stopped at the top of the stairs. Her hand slid from my throat to my chest, pressing lightly over my sternum. What are you going to do? I asked. Borrow you, she said. Just for a while. I need you to remember, and you won't. Not properly, unless you feel it. She took another step. We moved with her. My foot found the first stair by some automatic, obedient motion. The cold thickened. It was like walking into a freezer full of wet clothes and metal hooks. My breath came hard. We went down. The darkness closed around us, swallowing the candlelight from the hall. Only a faint glow from the fire upstairs reached here, a dull red suggestion of light. Halfway down, my knees buckled. Her hand tightened on my chest, keeping me upright. Don't fall, she said softly. It's worse if you fall. At the bottom, the concrete floor was so cold it sent needles through my socks into my bones. My toes screamed a high, panicked note in the back of my brain. Behind us, the door to the storage room opened wider by itself. I could see inside now. Crates, old tools, a coil of rope hanging from a nail. And beyond that, something tall and vertical, wrapped in a sheet. She steered me, not towards that, but towards the thick wooden support beam near the boiler. Turn around, she said. I couldn't. My muscles were locked. It didn't matter. She placed her hands on my shoulders and moved me like a doll. My back met the rough wood. As soon as it touched, a strange warmth flared there. Not comfort, more like recognition. Like the feeling of going back to a place you knew as a child, but never loved. I won't, I started, but my protest curdled in my throat. She lifted her hand. The rope from the storage room slid off its nail and slithered across the floor like a living thing, its coils unrolling. Its end rose, twisted in the air, and wrapped itself around my wrist. The touch of it made me gasp. It wasn't the normal roughness of rope. It was as if every fiber was made of tiny, cold teeth. It bit into my skin, settled, and tightened. The other end found my other wrist. In seconds, my arms were pulled out and back, stretched along the beam, forced into the same position I'd imagined from her journal, hands behind the post, shoulders protesting. The rope tightened. Pain flared. Not sharp, not yet. More like a deep ache that promised sharpness. I clenched my jaw. I could have left you alone, I said. You could have just let me go. Her expression didn't change. They left me, she said. I screamed until my throat bled, and the sound froze in the air and fell at my feet. They talked about me as if I were a story they'd heard, not a person. Do you know what they said? The last thing I heard before the storm swallowed their voices? I shook my head, unable to find words. They said, she murmured, leaning forward, her lips near my ear, that she'll pass out soon. She won't feel it, as if that made them kind. Her voice hardened. They thought pain stopped when you fell quiet. They never thought about what happens inside. She stepped back. The cold deepened around my wrists. The rope cut in, fibers grinding against skin. I felt the first sharp bite then, Not overwhelming, just a taste. I sucked in a breath. "Please," I said. I didn't know what I was asking. For mercy? For a shorter version? For nothing at all? "You wanted a story," she said. "You came into my house. You read my words. You carried me in your head like a character. I was not your character. I was a woman in the snow. Now you will be a man in the dark. We will see if they feel the same." The world narrowed to my arms. The cold there was no longer a temperature. It was an identity. My wrists were no longer part of me. They were the source of everything. Every heartbeat grew louder, echoing up the bones of my forearms. The rope tightened again. Pain shot up, bright, electric. It felt like something between burning and crushing, as if the rope were both fire and ice. My fingers curled instinctively, but there was nowhere for them to go. I gritted my teeth. Time thinned. "I can make it quick," she said conversationally. "Or I can make it honest. You decide." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt thick. "Honest then," she said, as if I'd spoken. The pain crept up inch by inch. It took its time, testing each nerve. My shoulders began to ache with a deep, grinding throb, as if someone had hammered nails into the joints. My feet, on the cold floor, started to fade away. First they burned, then they numbed. It happened faster than it should have. This was not ordinary cold. This was the distilled version of hers, poured directly into me. I tried to move my toes. They felt like they belonged to someone else. "I shouted for the dark," she said. "I didn't shout for them." Her voice came from somewhere in front of me, but I couldn't focus my eyes enough to see her clearly. The edges of the room were smearing. I realized dimly that I was shaking, not shivering in the usual way, more like my body was trying to jump out of itself, rejecting what was happening. My breath sped up. Each inhale was a knife. "Breathe slower," she said. "If you faint too soon, you'll miss it." My lungs didn't want to obey, but some survival instinct listened to her. I forced my breaths down, made them deeper. It did not make the pain go away. It sharpened it. I don't know how long it went on. Minutes, hours. Time in that basement stretched and curled like smoke. There were no clocks, no shifts in light. Only the steady pounding rhythm of my heart, and the incremental way sensation changed. My wrists went from burning to numb and back again, oscillating. Needles stabbed into my fingers. The ache in my shoulders grew heavier, then settled into a constant, grinding misery. My feet were gone. When I looked down, I saw them, but they might as well have been carved from stone. At some point, I realized I was making sounds, not words. Low, animal noises leaking out between my teeth. They embarrassed me, even as I couldn't stop them. She watched, not with glee, not with gloating, with a kind of detached focus, like a doctor observing a patient's reactions. "Do you understand?" she asked quietly after a while. I tried to say no. It came out as a rough exhale. "You think pain is a story," she said, "that it has a beginning, a middle, an end, that you can look back and say, 'That was bad, but it's over, and now I am wise.' You don't know what it means when it fills everything. When all you are is the hurt and the breath and the sound of your own skin. I wanted to tell her that I did understand, that I'd had my own pain, broken bones, a surgery gone wrong, nights lying awake with hot, throbbing aches that wouldn't let me sleep. But nothing in my past reached this. Those had been spikes. This was an ocean. My vision blurred. At the edges, shadows moved. I thought I saw her, standing by the storage room door. Behind her, other shapes hovered, men with their collars up, a woman with a scarf tied under her chin, children peering from behind skirts, all those who had watched her once. They watched me now. I tried to scream at them, to call them cowards, to tell them to look at what they'd made. My throat worked. No sound came. She stepped closer. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. They left me until my voice froze in my mouth, until my own teeth cut my tongue when my jaw clenched, until I could not tell if my fingers were still attached. Then they went home and slept, telling themselves I must have died quickly. It was kinder that way, they said. They comforted themselves with my imagined unconsciousness. She placed her hand over my heart again. "Do you want me to stop?" she asked. It was a trap. I knew it. But I also knew I couldn't take much more. My body felt like it was unraveling, pieces dropping away. "Yes," I croaked. The words scraped my throat. She nodded. "All right," she said. The cold vanished. Not completely, but it receded from my wrists, my shoulders, my feet, like a tide pulling back. The relief was so intense it was almost painful in itself. I sagged against the ropes, gasping. For a few seconds, all I could feel was the absence of what had been there, that blessed, aching emptiness. Then she smiled, and I saw the trap close. "Now you know," she said. "Now you understand why they stayed, why they didn't cut me down. To stop is to admit you could have stopped earlier. To ease the pain is to admit you were the source of it." Something sharp jabbed into my wrists. The cold came back, doubled. I screamed then. The sound tore out of me, cracked and raw. It bounced off the concrete walls, came back to my own ears like someone else's voice. She listened. "Good," she said. "Now we're talking." There are parts of what happened next that I can't put into sequence. I remember flashes, the rope biting deeper, until I was sure it had gone through the skin into the muscle, threads embedding themselves in the meat of me, the cold in my feet turning into a heavy, dead feeling, like I was standing on blocks of wood, the way my shoulders screamed when I tried, out of pure reflex, to struggle against the bindings. Her voice, sometimes distant, sometimes close to my ear, saying things I only caught pieces of. They said it was God's will, the way their eyes slid off me. I counted my heartbeats too. At some point, my hands stopped sending clear signals. They were just a mass of sensation, hot and cold at once, pain and numbness layered. I began to drift, the basement blurred. The beam behind my back became the post outside the sawmill. The concrete under my feet became packed snow. The air in front of me filled with white flakes that stung my face like sand. Voices came through the storm. Men arguing. A woman crying. A child asking if it was over yet. I tried to shout that I was still here, that it was not over, that it went on and on. The wind stuffed the sound back into my mouth. I saw her then, not as the pale ghost in the basement, but as she must have been that night. Flesh and blood and frost. Her hair stuck in stiff strands to her cheeks. Her lips were purple. Her nose ran in a thin line that froze before it reached her mouth. Her eyes were wild with pain and fury. Our gazes met across time. "You see?" she shouted over the storm. "You see what they called mercy?" I nodded, or thought I did. My neck barely worked. "They said I'd pass out and not feel it," she yelled. "Liars." I felt every breath, every finger, every crack. I wanted to say I was sorry, that I believed her, that I had been wrong to think of her suffering as a distant historical fact. Sorry sounded too small a word, even in my own head. The snow swirled thicker. Her figure blurred, then reformed in front of me in the basement. My wrists burned, my shoulders throbbed, my feet were lumps of nothing. "How long?" I gasped. It was the only question that mattered now. Not why, not what for, just how much more. She tilted her head. "As long as it takes," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For you to stop thinking of it as a story," she said. "For you to understand that there is no moral, no neat ending, no character development. There is only what was done and what remains." "I can't," I started. "You can," she said. The rope tightened again. I don't know if it was minutes or hours. My sense of self stretched thin, then frayed. At some point, a new feeling crept in around the edges of the pain, a buzzing numbness, not just in my limbs, but in my thoughts, like someone had wrapped my brain in cotton soaked in cold water. Voices came and went. Hers, mine. Others I didn't recognize. I saw faces, Lucas's, blurry with concern, Eva's, pale and tight, the bus driver's, Milan's, the old photograph of Lucas's grandparents. They floated around the edges of my vision, slipping out of focus when I tried to fix on them. My body started making decisions without me. It sobbed. It strained against the rope until my muscles spasmed. It tried to curl in on itself and found it couldn't. Somewhere deep inside, a smaller version of me watched, detached, cataloging. There, it thought. That's what happens when the rope is too tight. That's how shoulders sound when they're pulled beyond what they were made for. That's how far a person can go. At last, when I thought there was nothing left to squeeze, she spoke again. "That's enough," she said. The rope loosened, not all at once. Slowly, like a fist unclenching finger by finger. Sensation rushed back into my wrists in a flood. Pins and needles exploded under my skin. I cried out, an ugly, broken sound. My knees gave way. I slid down the beam, my legs folding under me. She caught me before I hit the floor. Her hands were still cold, but less so. Or maybe I had adjusted. She eased me down, so I sat with my back against the wood, my arms limp at my sides. The rope lay on the floor now, coiled harmlessly. My wrists were red, raw. The skin was broken in places, but not as badly as I would have expected given the sensations. There was no blood dripping, no exposed bone. The damage was shallow compared to what it had felt like. It took me a moment to process that. "You thought I'd tear you apart," she said. "Leave you with stumps, That's what you people imagine when you think of torture. Gore, bits missing. It's not about that. It's about staying whole and hurting anyway. I nodded weakly. Tears ran down my face, hot against my cold skin. My feet tingled as feeling crept back. The pain there was different. Deep, dull, with sharp edges. I didn't dare look. She knelt in front of me. "You'll live," she said, "if the storm lets you." "Why?" I croaked. "Why let me live?" She considered. "Because I did," she said. "Because they wanted me to die quickly, and I didn't. It bothered them. It plucked at some string inside they didn't want touched. I saw it in their faces when they came to check if I was still breathing. Alive suffering is different from dead suffering. One disappears when the grave is filled. The other walks around and looks at you." Her gaze bored into me. "You'll walk," she said, "if you can. You'll go back down to your city. You'll drink coffee in warm rooms and sleep in a bed that's only yours. You'll think of this. You'll feel it in your bones when winter comes, and you will know it was real." "You wanted to punish me," I said. She shrugged. "Punishment is a human word," she said. "I wanted you to know. That's all." She stood. The cold around us lessened. The basement seemed to widen, as if the walls had moved back a little. "I'll untie you now," she said, though I was already loose. "You'll sleep. When you wake, the storm will be lighter. Someone will come." "Who?" I asked. "Those who always come when the screaming stops," she said. "The ones who say, if we had known, we would have done something. Maybe they would have. Maybe not. It doesn't matter." She started towards the stairs. "Wait," I said, my voice cracking. She paused, half in shadow. "What?" she asked. "What's your name?" I asked. It felt important to call her something other than what the villagers did, to think of her as more than Winter Woman. She was silent for a long heartbeat. "Does it matter?" she said at last. "It does to me," I said. My voice shook, but not from pain this time. She looked back at me. For a moment, something softer passed over her face. Not forgiveness, some smaller, quieter thing. "Magda," she said. "They called me Magda, when they used my name at all." "Magda," I repeated. The sound tasted strange in my mouth. She nodded. "Remember it," she said. "When they tell my story, they leave it out. A nameless witch in the snow. Remember that I had a name." I nodded. She went up the stairs without another word. Her bare feet made no sound on the wood. The door at the top closed behind her with a soft click. The cold in the basement sank back to something merely brutal instead of supernatural. I let my head fall back against the beam. Blackness edged my vision. I slid under. I woke to light. Not candlelight. Thin gray daylight filtering through the small basement window near the ceiling. My whole body hurt. There is no elegant way to describe it. Every joint ached. Every muscle throbbed. My skin felt too tight. My wrists screamed when I tried to move my fingers. My toes were on fire. I forced myself to look, My feet were still there. The skin on my toes was a worrying color, mottled red and white. But when I poked one, I felt it. Pain shot up, sharp and clear. That was good, I told myself. Nerves still working. My wrists were banded with angry red grooves. In a few places, the skin had broken enough to bead blood. Nothing life-threatening. Enough to scar. I pushed myself upright. The basement spun, then settled. I gritted my teeth and got to my knees, then my feet. Every step up the stairs was a small war. At the top, the door opened easily. The house was cold, but not as bone-deep as before. The fire in the living room had burned down to ashes. Light came through the windows, weak but real. The storm had eased. Snow still lay thick around the house, but the air seemed thinner. The sky was a lighter gray. My phone, when I found it and plugged it into a portable battery pack I'd saved for emergencies, buzzed to life. Signal bars blinked into existence. Almost immediately, messages started coming in. From Lucas, from Eva, from an unknown number that turned out to be Milan's. "Where are you? Are you okay?" The storm knocked out power. "Road's been closed. Eva said you weren't answering." Answer. My fingers shook as I typed. "I'm here. I'm hurt. I need help." The reply came fast. "Stay put," Milan wrote. "Don't try to walk. We'll come with the snowmobile. Might take a while." I set the phone down. My hands couldn't hold it steady for long. In the kitchen, the back door was closed. The snow pressed against the window in a soft, frozen wave. On the glass, near the bottom, a clear patch had formed in the frost. A handprint, the fingers longer than mine. I stared at it. "Thank you," I said softly. The wind outside rustled. The house creaked. Somewhere distant in the trees, a sound like a woman's voice rose and fell, then faded. I sat in the hall, wrapped in every blanket I could find, and waited. Pain hummed through me. I welcomed it. It meant I was still here. At some point I must have dozed. I woke to the rumble of an engine, the crunch of snow being compressed under heavy treads. Voices outside, boots on the steps. The front door opened. Cold flooded in. Figures loomed, bundled in coats and scarves. Eva's face, pale, eyes wide. Milan behind her, mouth set in a tight line. A third man I didn't know, carrying a folded stretcher. "Jesus," Eva whispered. "Look at you." Milan's gaze dropped to my wrists. He flinched. "What happened?" he asked. I opened my mouth. The words that came out were not the ones I'd rehearsed in my head. "I slipped on the stairs," I said, "down to the basement. Hit my wrists on the railing. Got stuck against the beam. The power was out. I must have passed out. Stupid." It felt like betrayal even as I said it. Why did I lie? I don't know. Maybe because the truth sounded insane. Maybe because I could already see how their faces would change if I said, "The winter woman tied me up and made me feel what she felt." Maybe because some part of me wanted to keep Magda for myself, not let her become their story again, reduced to an anecdote about crazy city people seeing ghosts in the snow. Eva looked unconvinced, but she didn't push. "You're lucky you didn't break your neck," she said quietly. The unknown man checked my pulse, my pupils, the circulation in my fingers. "Might be some frostbite," he said. "Toes, maybe fingertips. We'll get you down to the clinic. Good thing you called. Another day and it would have been much worse." They bundled me in more blankets, helped me onto the stretcher. The movement hurt, but in a way I could tolerate now. Ordinary pain. Human pain. As they carried me out, I caught one last glimpse of the hallway. The basement door stood slightly ajar. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing at the top of the stairs. A pale shape, dark hair, a dress the color of old snow. She lifted a hand, not in a wave, more like a small, tired gesture of acknowledgement. I blinked. She was gone. Outside, the air hit my face like a slap. The sky was high and colorless. The snow reflected the light, making me squint. They loaded me onto the back of the snowmobile, securing the stretcher. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house. It stood there, solid, square, smoke finally starting to rise from the chimney again, where someone had thrown logs on the fire. Snow piled against its sides. The windows watched us go. At the edge of the tree line near the road, I saw footprints. 2 sets, one in boots, one bare. They walked side by side for a few meters. Then the bare ones veered off, disappearing into the deeper snow under the trees. I closed my eyes. The ride down was rough. Every bump jolted my sore joints. The cold gnawed at my exposed face. The engine's roar filled my ears. Underneath it, in the spaces between, I could still hear her sometimes. Not words, just a hum. A low, steady sound, like someone singing under their breath while they worked. They kept me in the hospital for a few days. Frostbite, minor. Nerve damage in my wrists. Temporary, they said. Should heal with time. Rest. Physical therapy. The bruising in my shoulders was impressive, according to the nurse who changed my dressings. I told the same story to everyone. Slipped on the stairs. Hit the beam. Got stuck. No one else was there. No, I wasn't drinking. Yes, I know it sounds stupid. Some believed me. Some didn't. It didn't matter. Lucas visited once, pale with guilt. He kept apologizing for asking me to go up there. "It was my fault," he said. "If I'd known the storm would be that bad." "It wasn't your fault," I said. He looked at my bandaged hands, at the deep bruises that banded my arms. "I dreamed about her," he said suddenly, voice low. "When I was a kid, at my grandparents' house. I'd wake up freezing, like there was snow in the room. She'd stand by the window. I could see the trees through her. She never said anything, just watched. My grandmother would say, 'Don't look at her, and she'll go away.' I always looked." He swallowed. "I thought I'd imagined it," he said. "Kids' dreams. Stupid. But when Eva called and said you'd gone quiet up there, and the storm had started, I remembered. I pictured you in that house with her and I..." He trailed off. I could have told him then. I didn't. Some part of me was ashamed at my own cowardice in lying. Another part was oddly protective of what had happened. It felt like something intimate, in a twisted way, shared between me and a dead woman. Your grandparents, I said instead. Did they ever say what really happened to her? He frowned. To who? The winter woman, I said. Magda. He stared at me. How do you know her name? He asked. I met his eyes. She told me, I said. The room seemed to grow colder for a moment. Or maybe it was in my head. He watched my face, searching for a joke, a tell. He didn't find one. My grandmother used to whisper it, he said. Only in the kitchen, when the men weren't there. She'd say, "Poor Magda," then cross herself quickly, like she'd said something dangerous. My grandfather said it was unlucky to say a ghost's name, that if you did, she'd hear and remember you. Maybe he was right, I said. We sat in silence for a while after that. When he left, he squeezed my shoulder, careful of the bruises. Don't go back there, he said. When you're better, I mean. We'll sell the place. Let someone else deal with it. I won't, I said. I meant it then. Spring came. Not quickly, not all at once. The snow in the city turned to gray slush. The days got longer. My hands healed. The grooves around my wrists faded to faint lines. My toes stopped aching in the night. I went back to work. Stocked shelves. Rang up customers. Said the right things when they commented on the weather. I slept with socks on, even when it was warm. On the first hot day of summer, when people walked around in shorts and ate ice cream on benches, I sat in my small apartment with the fan on and thought about snow. It would have been easy at that point to file what happened under breakdown, to tell myself the isolation, the storm, the power outage, the old stories. My own anxious brain had combined into something that felt real. But when I touched my wrists, I felt the thin ridges of scar tissue. When I closed my eyes at night, sometimes, I felt the roughness of the beam against my back, the pressure of the rope. My body remembered, even when my mind tried to smooth the edges. I didn't talk about it. Not because I was afraid of being called crazy. That would have been almost a relief. It would have given me a category to slot myself into. I didn't talk about it because, in a strange way, it wasn't mine alone. It was hers, Magda's. Telling it wrong felt like another kind of theft. Summer passed. Autumn. Leaves fell. Shops started putting up decorations again. The same cycle of plastic cheer. The first time I saw my breath in the air that year, my heart stuttered. Winter was coming back. I started waking earlier, without alarms. I'd lie in bed listening to the radiator tick, waiting for a voice that didn't come. The city had its own cold, but it was thinner, less dense. Still, on some mornings, a particular wind would sneak down the street and slip under my coat, and my body would go rigid in that old, remembered way. In the mirror, my face looked the same. A little more tired around the eyes, maybe. I caught myself standing too long at the window, watching the first light snowfall dust the pavement. The flakes were smaller than mountain snow, less pure, but they still made that hush. One night, when the city noise dipped low, I heard a sound. Not outside, inside my head, or inside the pipes, or somewhere between. A woman humming under her breath, the melody from the basement, from the sawmill, from wherever pain and persistence meet. I sat up. "Magda," I said quietly. The humming stopped. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, in the radiator, a small knocking began. Not regular enough to be mechanical, not polite enough to be coincidental. I smiled despite myself. "I remember your name," I said. "I won't forget." The knocking eased. The radiator went back to its normal ticks. I lay down again. When sleep came, it brought dreams. Not of the basement, not of the beam and the ropes, of snowfields, trees, a woman walking ahead of me, her bare feet leaving prints that smoked faintly. She didn't look back. I followed anyway. Not out of compulsion, out of recognition. There is just a house on a hill that still stands. There is just winter, coming back around again and again, indifferent to our guilt. There is just a woman whose name was almost erased, pushing her way into our stories any way she can, through footprints, through frost on glass, through the scars on my wrists. Sometimes, on the coldest nights, when the city quiets and the air burns my lungs in that particular sharp way, I swear I hear her outside my window. She doesn't call my name anymore. She doesn't have to. She knows I'm listening.